that we or do not participate in. And voters every 4 years are able to elect local committee people. And the committee people are representatives from the wards that are, so there are 66 wards in Philadelphia today. There's 66 wards today. It has grown with the population of Philadelphia, and these wards have been broken down into, I think, 11 to 51 divisions per ward.
Per ward?
I believe that's the case. Yeah, so there's hundreds of ward divisions, and then you have like 2 representatives from each division of each ward that are elected by the people, and then those committee people amongst themselves vote for ward leaders, which I was talking about before. And those so the ward leaders are not publicly elected, which is important because those ward leaders then form city committees who then appoint or not appoint, but nominate political candidates, including local committee people. So you have this system. This is from the City of Philadelphia website, where it's supposed to be voters, committee people, ward leaders, city committee chair. Sounds great, right? If I knew how to make graphics, I would change this to a circle that entirely cuts the voters out. Because that's really what you have, is the board leaders and the city committee chairs choosing the committee people that the voters get to vote for in the first place. Gotta love it. Gonna leave that where it is for now. We can talk about mayor and city council for a little bit. And in every city in America, things are broken up a little bit differently. This happens to be how it is in Philadelphia. It's called I'm pretty sure it's just called a mayor council organization. There's like 5 major types of city organization. It's not that important because they all effectively do the same thing. And what that means is that, you have the city council, which is the legislative body, which comes up with laws. And did you want to say something first, Albert?
I just have a question when you're done with this.
Sure, yeah. The city council is the major legislative body in the city, which approves mayoral appointments, imposes taxes, and override mayoral vetoes. And in the city right now, we have 17 council members, 10 which represent the districts, which are separate from the wards. These are different breaking ups of the different divisions of the city. I just want to show hands right now. Who knows who their district representative is? Okay, the city planner in the room knows who their district representative is. Everybody else does not. And no, that's not personal failings. That's systemic failing, because the city is split up in so many different ways that us working people who are busy and have shit to do don't have the time to know all of this stuff. Public meetings are held for city council on Thursdays at 10 a.m. in room 400 of City Hall, which just so happens to be a time when most people are working. The mayor is the chief executive of the city, appoints and removes department heads, which the city council approves, drafts, proposes budget for the city council, holds veto power, represents the city on a state, national, international level, and is not a member of the city council. And in some cities, you do have a setup where the mayor is technically like the head of the city council. That's not the case in Philadelphia. But like I said before, it's not entirely relevant because in every city in America, all of these systems are bureaucratic in nature, and they might shuffle some of the titles and organizations or what do you want to call them, departments around, but they all serve to serve capital. And can I do it this time? A little bit, but oh yeah, let's get to questions first.
Yeah, so you spelled out the power that the city council has. What did you say that the thing beneath wards is, or wards are divided?
So wards are divided into divisions. They're called a number of different things. Sometimes they're called precincts. Sometimes they're called divisions. I think they're also sometimes called I think they're also sometimes called districts. which is not to be confused with actual districts, which are larger than wards, because the wards are the smallest political unit of the city.
So what kind of power do wards have in a practical sense? What's the significance of this?
So that's a good question, because they essentially control. Casey.
How elections are run, like when you go to vote, your ward leader is the person who checks all of the stuff that you have to sign in with it. And I think ward leaders also get to choose, well, there's many people who then go back and choose the ward leaders. Yeah.
Right, yes, precisely. Do we have other, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I just had like a comment. Something I learned in my research recently is that Philadelphia is nationally notorious for having the lowest percentage of people who know their council members, because of how fast the Democratic machine runs in Philly, and people are very much expecting that they trust their neighbors to just elect a Democrat and they're gonna do whatever. And because there's not like the two-party competition, like nobody can super represent.
That's exactly how it works. Okay, so next we're going to talk about RCOs. I still can't figure out how to get this.
I'm sorry. We're gonna find a way so that this never happens. By the way, I want to make that.
I don't know how Casey's magic. Casey is just a magical being who knows how to work computers. Maybe that's not magic, actually. Maybe that's just knowledge.
Computers are magic.
But okay, so RCOs, sorry for the abrasiveness. Registered community organizations. Right? Not much. Registered community organizations are intended to give residents a voice in the development that happens in their city. That's the stated purpose of these organizations. And what you end up having is certain types of developers have to notify surrounding neighbors and neighborhoods of projects that they are proposing to develop. The only thing is that 3/4 of development that happens in the city is considered by right development, which means that they do not have to consult the RCO or the surrounding neighbors. If development project is refused, a request for a permit is refused by the licensing and inspection office, then they can appeal that refusal and bring it to the zoning board of adjustments. And that's where RCOs are supposed to be able to step in, is before they go to the zoning board of adjustment for an appeal. The RCO is supposed to say, no, we don't want you to build this here because it doesn't abide by the zoning laws or the building codes that are in place by the city. But for some reason, we have an entire office in our city, the zoning board of adjustments, which exists to decide whether or not developers have to follow the law. Would you like to say something, Bianca? Yeah, so really you would think that we have zoning laws and building codes so that they just have to be followed, and if you don't follow them, you don't get to build your thing. But that's not the case. We have a body that says, well, maybe just for you for this special case. What do you want to say, Bianca?
Yeah, so what that process is called is a variance, where it's like you're allowed to vary from the zoning code. The zoning board of adjustments approves the variance what the developer is asking for, and Philadelphia actually has like the highest variance rate in the country. They're supposed to be really hard to get a variance accepted. In most places, they don't. In a lot of places, it's very hard for people to get variances, but because of how everything's set up in Philadelphia, the zoning board of adjustments is appointed by the mayor. And the mayor, its campaign is funded by developers. So who goes on those boards that the mayor is appointing is developers. And obviously those people are going to be more favorable to other people in their own industry. So it's like, this whole thing is completely manufactured.
Yeah.
So we don't actually have any sort of way to participate.
Precisely. And so you can see that RCOs are essentially designed to be like I've heard it described as a carrot and stick, which is a perfect way to describe it because you have this thing that public face of the city where they say, look, you can start your own organization with your neighbors and have a say about like what happens there. And it sounds great. It really does. It sounds great in theory. But the more you dig into it, the more you realize that a lot of these organizations are beholden to the city, which brings us to our discussion that I think we just want to have as a group. And that is all of these issues. And what do we do? You know? So Casey, if you could work your magic one more time for me here. Oh wait, did I do it?
So basically, there's a control screen and a presentation screen, and the control screen ended up on the presentation, like on the projector. So if you turn around and look, you control it over there, like it's just back.
Okay, I'll take it. Right.
No, it's literally messed up. It's not supposed to work. This looks different than what's on the screen.
Yeah, it's
Okay, that happened last, it's just.
I'm seeing something that's different from it's fine. It's okay. So as a group, let's talk about some of these questions. What are some of the problems that capitalism created in Philly? And what are some solutions that socialism can bring? And let's pass around the mic for the folks on Zoom for answers.
I was just gonna make a dumb joke. Capitalism created Philly in the first place.
That's true.
Can I actually?
Sorry, I just wanted to, because I wrote this.
Nothing works. Okay. I wrote this slide and I just want to give one little motivation for our discussion that we could have. And if we want to, we could even get in a circle and talk to each other. But what I was thinking is we're at where we are. We're at the present day, right? We're dealing with all this stuff. This is the political system that we have to work against. These are the conditions that we're living in and that we have to solve. There are things that make any society run, you know, political power, who gets to make decisions, control of the economy, what gets made and where does it go, the energy problem, the food problem, the housing and transport problem, medicine, education, all of these things. I just want us to get in the headspace of thinking about what does it actually look like right now and where do we need to be and how do we get there? That's what the scope of the discussion. So I mean, I can go anywhere. Okay, Reiner, you can facilitate this.
Yeah, I guess we're just going no bites now. I think
I don't know what happened. Speak up, sorry. Yeah, you know what? We wanna.
Yeah, we can.
Let's look at each other. Let's have a conversation. I know it's a little late in bed, but I one more coffee, so I think I'm about just me.
Is there anyone on Zoom that like any chats or anything?
That what?
Oh, okay. The Zoom people don't have anything to say as of Oh yeah. Let's get y'all. We'll put y'all in the circle. In the middle.
Why don't you like
Oh yeah.
So they can see everybody.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
And okay, we're getting thumbs up. That's good. If anyone has, I guess we have someone look. I could keep an eye on the chat, or if anyone has their hand.
Yeah, I'll keep. Yeah, I can do that.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, how do people feel? Well, we shouldn't feel defeated. It's easy to feel that way with a conversation like this, but there's nuance to it. Because the reason that we talk about these things is because there are tools that exist at our disposal to fight back. Even though a lot of times those tools might be found to be ineffective or just sort of designed to funnel like people power essentially into bureaucratic processes, it's still vital that we are utilizing what we have at our disposal and doing it in a unified community. Because like I was saying about the RCOs, the issue is you're not beholden to the neighbors, but if you create power amongst yourselves where you are beholden to your community, and that's what we're trying to do here, then you actually have something that's a fighting chance. So I realize that this conversation can leave a lot of like sort of doom and gloom in the air, but that's not the intention. Anybody else?
I think one of the big ways to think through it is that whole Reconstruction thing that we brought up earlier, where there was some attempts to fix a lot of the problems that we had created for ourselves, was not finished. It was botched and it was killed too early. And what we're looking at is like, we need a new Reconstruction. We have these issues and we're already talking about tools that we need to fix them, which is like getting mass organizations of people who care about what's going on to carry through decisions that we all have to get through. Like that's the main tool that our class has.
I was just gonna say, were you done? Okay, I was just gonna say, I think we all collectively need like a key for it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, breathe in, breathe out. Thank you for dealing with all of our technical issues, but expect that to happen. But thank you for being here.
Yeah, and I think like as we go around, maybe we could like introduce ourselves, names, pronouns we prefer, and maybe about that fact about yourself, particularly friendly, start us off. I guess. I'm Shane. Ule is good, and I would say that we've been talking a bit about like Reconstruction, and for those who may not be familiar, this was sort of like an era after the Civil War in the South, in which Union soldiers had basically occupied the entirety of the South, and there was this political transformation that was incredibly democratic, like arguably, and I know this sounds like I'm saying this like the late 1800s, but it was like arguably one of the most progressive times in American history. You actually had political input from everyone in the South with a specific focus on recently free African people, and you had Black people getting into office. You had like community organizations. There was the start of like state programs, like public schools, like all of these things that were sort of like the building blocks to like a more complete and just society. But it was finished prematurely, and this is due to one, like white vigilances, and this is when like the KKK first comes out and starts fighting back against these things, and then also the unwillingness of the federal state to let it continue. There were definitely hardliners like for Reconstruction within the U.S. government, but there weren't enough, and there were also a lot of people within this the government who were against it, and there was a sort of period, Lincoln was sort of oversaw the beginning, we all know what happened to him, and then it was Andrew Johnson after that who wanted to basically try and reverse it, and after he was out, I forget if it was Grant, who was Grant immediately after, or someone else, but they tried to sort of get things back on track, but it didn't stay the same. And after that, it sort of petered out. And afterwards, that's when we see the rise of Jim Crow, and that's when we see the Great Migration, sharecropping, and all of these systems that sort of mimic slavery without like actually being it. So I just wanted to provide that context of what Reconstruction was, and then what it could be, if we actually let it continue to say it.
Any other thought, Casey?
I'll give a specific example. The energy companies, Pico and, PGW, thank you. Privately owned, everyone needs energy, they're trying to make money off of it, even to the extent that like, they're trying to open up a new liquefied natural gas plant in Chester. And this is one of the big things that we've been thinking about throughout this class, is like, we need to get rid of all of the old divisions between Philadelphia is this and the counties are that. It's one regional ecosystem, it's one big economy that we all live in. And because they're going after profits, they keep trying to go after fracking, keep trying to make people pay price increases for their water and sewage, when we all gonna use water and sewage. Even after, or right now, we all need to have power over that. But we have to have the ability to control how it's produced and how it's distributed and at what price.
So what are some parts of our city that are currently tools of capitalists that could be tools in the hands of the working class if we had the power to organize society? What parts need to go entirely, and what do we need that we don't have tools for? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Bianca?
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is like the political power, and what that is like the ability to control the things that are happening around. It doesn't have to do with the Democrats or the Republicans, it has to do with literally who has the power to make things happen. And I mean, like, if we're talking about building the power for us so that we can decide what's happening for ourselves. I guess that like requires us to really like yeah, well, we have to speak over and stuff, but I think it's also like
What do you do?
like this reference, I'm like
Yeah, no.
like stuff like this is important because it's like when we do take over, we're gonna have to understand how to run things. Like we have to understand how civics works now so that we can make it better and make it actually work for the people when we take over. And like, you know, having things be efficient and make sense, where like, for example, like a train can just go on whatever track it needs to go on because that's the quickest way to get somewhere, not like they own this track or they pay someone to use that track for a day or something like that. So like, yeah, just like what we're talking about is building political power inside political control, and like how do we do that to address all of these different problems?
Well, like the transportation front, I don't know. If we're all paying attention to what's going on with septic right now. So like, I don't know if anybody has any like explanations for this, because I'm curious, but I do know that there's a major structural problem with SEPTA, which is basically that this country doesn't take transportation seriously, right? So if you're gonna buy something like a rail car and you're gonna use it for 30 to 50 years, doesn't it make sense to buy the nicest rail car possible and to take the best care possible so that the long-term cost of operations is kept at a minimum and reliability and safety is kept at a maximum? Well, that's the exact opposite of what SEPTA does. Right, so I mean, SEPTA, I can guarantee that your train was built by the lowest bidder. And I can guarantee that everything on it is rattling apart right now, and basically the mechanics are constantly trying to put fires out, right? And then some, hopefully not.
See, we're not in Boston.
And then, you know, the rail infrastructure and Billy, it was built. Yeah, it happens, you know, it's embarrassing. The infrastructure was built like in the 1800s, right? And you know, it was built right, it was built once. And rather than put maintenance into the operating budget, they just kind of let things slowly fall apart. So it was like a slow liquidation of the massive amount of public wealth that was put into building the infrastructure in the first place. It's just being allowed to slowly erode away so that, you know, people in leadership can claim, oh, you know, we saved money, you know, we reduced the operating costs this year, you know, like just kind of letting things fall apart. But, you know, it's like, oh, we got trains for cheaper than expected this time around, you know, rather than getting trains that were nice and would actually last. So I mean, like a planned economy that's planned around providing maximum good for the longest term is not gonna be trying to nickel and dime its way into next quarter's reports. It's gonna be buying and investing in things that hold up for the long term, that are built for the long haul.
Katie?
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of like, I'm thinking of it in the context of crisis, how much we need to centralize and long-term planning, and like, anybody in Philadelphia can look around and like see the fact that, I think it's like 40,000 vacant lots that developers are allowed to buy from the city for $1, but regular people can't. Meanwhile, we have like a homeless population that's like barely even counted correctly, much less serviced correctly, and then you have all these like city institutions lording over like, oh, we want to get more funding for like the Office of Homeless Services and stuff. But it's like we have all the infrastructure available to provide housing to those people. And then meanwhile, we also have like landlords who are taking a unit and dividing it up into 3 places. So you have like 15 people living in like a space like for one person. And like that's like we saw with headlining also like part of the like, you know, it's development in the city is like the wild west, and people can just kind of like do whatever they want. There's no central planning of like, how are we gonna give everybody housing? And instead we're literally, it sounds more cost effective, but they're wasting money making people like fight over how we're gonna deal with the people that we can't house.
Something that I wanna bring up. We were talking about L&I, and like the inspections office has about 30 to 50 inspectors, I think, for the entire city. Like, and they estimate we probably need about like 100 more to get things just flowing tolerably for the cabinets. Like that's like they're already making it so bad that like first of all, the houses in the city, and a lot of people have lived in them for generations and just don't have the money to take care of the place because all of the money that they're making for society is going out to another town. There's a lot of people who would love to have the skills to rebuild their neighborhoods that don't have the skills to rebuild their neighborhoods because everybody who has the skills doesn't want to pay to train anyone to rebuild them. And instead, to make the most amount of money possible off of this situation, what we get is things stay vacant for years to drive the value of all the homes around you down. They're destroyed without any regard to the houses connected to them, because like we live in row homes. If you take one out, you're removing structural support from the entire rest of the block. And then what they put up instead is like fucking cardboard and goddamn plastic straws for your water, which is all meant to break down. It's not meant to like be sustainable. So that in another 10 years or whatever, you get to pay some other big guy to come in and fix all the other problems with government. And bubble gum. And the problem keeps going and going and going. So there's the economic productive angle, and there's the political angle of like the licenses and inspections. The L&I office is a bad thing up front, but if we made it whole, if we made it function the way it was supposed to, and actually enforced the licensing and inspection part on the developers, you know, we might all end up in a better situation.
Also, we'd like to encourage anyone who has spoken against.
Yeah, I didn't last one. I just wanted to add was like the housing prices, the environmental factors also. I heard from an engineer and a meeting, and he said one of the things that he speak about, but he has like how it's bad prices, you know. So when I went on the website, like they presented the numbers like 20,000, and they're like in the process of fixing all of those things are like our network transparency. So those are imposing some environmental risks in children, and we see schools are closing, and children don't even have the means to go to school in a neighborhood. They have to travel all the way out to the county to be there, being spaces to get the right form of education. And some of those parts of my gentrification with different schools are being turned into businesses. And I mean, socially, some people are enjoying the space whenever it has come to be, but if you have the radical lens, you will want to see that this is not how it is in Silver, you know, those children can literally walk to school, you know, whether or not children are. So I'm going to that,
Thank you so much. What was your name?
lots of.
Wata?
It's
Thank you so much.
Hi, Luke, my name is Luke. I just wanted to add on to the housing thing too. The really frustrating part for me is, I believe, Kate, I believe you said that, there's resources there for the homeless people. Like there's, like hundreds of vacant homes in Philly and
You're building more.
exactly, and they just keep doing it, and people really don't, I think a lot of people think the homeless problem is something that. Like, we don't have the tools to fix, it's something that we, like, it's a problem and nobody really knows what's going on, they know what's going on. They want people to be homeless, they want them to be addicted to drugs, like during the. I don't live in Philly, I live in Delco, but I still saw a lot of campaign ads for the mayoral thing. Talk to the one guy, his thing, was, we're gonna clean up the damn trash, but not one of them said anything about Kensington. Didn't hear anything about the drug problem. This is the largest open drug market, I hear sometimes in the world, people say. And they just have they act like there's no solutions for it, but there is things to be done. And I think it's just frustrating that I guess like the common person doesn't understand that, or doesn't really know, and they're kept in the dark about it, that there are solutions to these problems, that it's just really capital and profit that's making it not solvable.
That's totally true. And I mean, that's why we have this space and try to have these events, you know, to get more people in the community talking about these things. Albert?
So. There are some niche discussions that were during the mayoral race about how to deal with the Kensington issue. There was somebody who was talking about harassing people with drones. Like, I'm not even kidding you. There was,
That was one of the city council.
oh, was that? Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, at the end of the day, it comes down to like the commodification of housing. And by the way, my name is Al. Basically, you know, housing isn't produced for people to live in it. You know, it's produced by a perverse logic to be exchanged, to be speculated on, to watch the line go up when you buy the house, right? And if you start housing people, the line starts to go down, right? Because all of a sudden, there's people who are getting a better deal on housing, well, that exerts downward pressure on things like property value, it exerts downward pressures on things like rent. Because it's like, oh, what do you mean? I don't have to pay rent or be homeless? I can not pay rent and still have a house? Well, gee, why am I paying rent? Right? So I mean, it's really like landlords and land speculators who need people to be homeless. It's a structural requirement as long as housing is commodified. Right, and I got nothing against homeowners, I'm hoping to be one someday, but like the fact of the matter is, what a convoluted system to house people, where it's like. You have to sacrifice several times more than the property is worth to buy the place. And then if there's an economic downturn, now you can't leave because the property value is too low and you're gonna have negative equity. Like, it should not be that hard. There needs to be some kind of central housing authority that like actually makes sense. And that actually invest in properties so that they're not slowly deteriorating, right? And doing little patchwork fixes here and there because that's all individual homeowners can afford, right? There needs to be an emphasis on high quality housing that is built to last, you know, where the workmanship is very high quality and it's not built to fix a house in the shortest amount of time for the most amount of money. It's made to really build something to last, right?
I see also, sorry, I see also like be on Instagram, I'll be scrolling through reels and stuff, and there's like god awful realtor Instagram or like realtor TikTok, fucking worse. But they like the one guy, I always see him too, and he's like, this top 5 reasons you should buy instead of rent. It's like, dude, you think people are like choosing to rent? Think they're not like forced to do it?
Right.
Like, I don't know, it's just like, they seem so out of touch with the problem even.
And as long as jobs are as unsecure as they are, like it doesn't make sense to buy, like. People often have to rent, even if they in theory have the money, because they don't know where they're gonna be next month, they don't know where they're gonna be next year, you can't plan your life under capitalism, because there's no plan under capitalism.
Bianca, did you have a point?
Yeah, so yeah, we were talking about before with the arts and the little bit of other things like that, it's like, so the government, the ruling class, they work together to create these like conceptions of ways that we can meaningfully participate and like build political power. But obviously it's just ways to like make us expend our energy in things that will not actually do anything for us, so that we don't realize there are real ways that we can organize people and build political power for people. So I just wanted to bring some like revolutionary optimism into the
Yes.
conversation. But yeah, it's like, we need to figure out what are the ways, like, we bring people together like this. We build together, we figure out what we need to do to take power. And it's like, and we have solutions that are going around about how we can fix all of these problems. It's really like, yeah, just, I think it's like really about making people realize that there are other ways to build power and that they have the ability to do that. If they just have to come together.
Yeah, I mean, in this room right now, there's just over a dozen of us. We have a city planner, we have somebody who works for SEPTA, we have a UPS driver or UPS worker. But imagine if the more people we get into spaces like these, but people are smart, people know how to do things because workers run the damn world, you know? So like when we put our heads together to figure out ways that like processes of organizing society that actually works instead of works to make the line go up, then it's like I mean, Katie and I have this conversation all the time about how like communists are just better at doing things.
Yeah. Like small business, you know how business started with the capitalists who owns it.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many people I like, so at UPS in the Teamsters Union, you'd be surprised how many people I work with are like shocked to learn that the union is like a socialist communist organization within the company, or well, works to be one at least. And like there's a guy I work with who wears a Trump 24 hat to work, and he's in the Teamsters.
Yeah.
You realize like if you voted for Trump and he had his way, he would just get rid of the union
Right.
at UPS and just make everybody work for shit. Like,
Yep. That's very true.
Voting against their interests because they're not informed. It's sad. It's funny, but it's sad.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes down to it.
And Trump's business model was basically finding disorganized workers.
Yeah,
That is not paying.
exactly. Building stuff and then declaring back stuff, putting that pay.
Yeah, something that I've been thinking about throughout this discussion too is the healthcare system, and of course it's like fundamentally broken on a national level, but here in Pennsylvania, and specifically in Philadelphia, we are like the place for medical care. Like we have some of the most advanced technology, we have some of the best like medical care, best medical facilities in the country, but
Chop is like one of the best.
Yeah, there's all of these. That's what I'm getting. Yeah, because barely anyone can actually access these things because of the market system, right? If there was actually like, you know, some planning involved, if there was actually an effort to push people, more people into medicine, to up the staff, to actually, you know, make things sustainable so more people could receive this top tier coverage, then like health outcomes would be so much better. And I mean, that's also just like on the side of like, you know, hospitals and doctors and things like that. But then there's also, you know, the social determinants of health, the things that can prevent long-term illness, disease, things like that. You know, like we have schools that still have asbestos in them, public schools that, you know, there's a lot of like the pipes are super old and outdated. And, like, you know, we're drinking lead, we're breathing asbestos, and also, and here's another thing too, is that like, you know, all of these problems, you know, housing, healthcare, all of these things are intertwined, right? Something I think about a lot is at 40th and Market in West Philly, the University City townhomes in these, it was like the last low income affordable housing within that zip code. They're scheduled to be like partially run down, and they're going to build up, I think, like like student housing or something like that. The original plan was to do away with the whole thing and build up another research lab, because, God knows we need another research lab in the city. But there was actually a fight back. The tenants of the townhomes and a whole coalition formed. There's fight against it. And while it was certainly a compromise, the part of it is still getting torn down. There's still going to be some there, and there is a promise to have some of the housing as low income now. If they actually do that, we'll have to see. Sorry, I was getting a bit ahead of myself, but one of the tenants there is an older woman. One of the reasons that she had to stay there for her health was because of the proximity to the hospitals that she was regularly going to the doctors that she was regularly going to. Now, she's forced to leave, and she's going to be kicked out. And there's going to be this, long distance between her and the places that she needs to receive her care. And, stuff like this, it happens, on a much larger scale. This is just one story of many. Not everyone has, not everyone organizes and fights back against these things. Sometimes they happen without any struggle. And yeah, I think that it's, and it's all because of the market. It's all of these things go back to people being. I think that's the most heinous thing in the world. And these people, they have names, address, but these are
There's more than one way to lose a house.
So, but yeah, these are actual people, and of course, it's the system itself that's the problem that needs to be fixed. But yeah, it's really important to look up, who these people are, who has control. Maybe some of us strongly worded
Maybe.
Yeah, Shane's point reminded me of a small one, within healthcare, which is just imagine how different things would be if we could assign the work of jobs to what is actually needed and what is important. And I just think about the fact in healthcare that you can make more money. We have a nursing shortage right now, and you can make more money being an insurance agent than you can being a CNA, and that makes sense.
Kelsey.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kelsey. I use she, her pronouns. Having a long conversation about healthcare and discussions on the shop. The fun fact about me is that I face paint children, adults, a lot of community events around. For the past few years, this is more of a positive story, but also talks on the idea of things that being transparent and opportunities not being resources not being known that are there. So at CHOP, they have a division for gender diversity, and there's this very large Pride in July event every year, and it's really lovely and being a part of these families that are growing and learning together as with CHOP leading them, and I face painting is really special because I get to speak one-on-one with the kids and often with the parents, and always where are you from, and so little of that, if any. Most are coming in from surrounding counties, but all in all, I think it's a really good thing that we do over there, and I learned to grow myself with each event. Similarly to being here with you guys, but I wish it was something that was part of it. I wish it's
Absolutely. And I just want to add, Justin in the chat on Zoom mentioned food deserts, which also goes along with the woman that you were talking about who got separated, is getting separated from her access to the hospital. So many people are separated from access to food, just because or fresh food in their neighborhoods. Again, going back to because it's just simply not profitable for corporations to put them in those neighborhoods, and it's more profitable to suppress those neighborhoods and keep them trapped in unhealthy fast food and processed frozen foods that I love to eat, honestly. Unfortunately, they got me hooked.
My name is Mugo. I've only lived in Philly for a year, so please excuse my ignorance on, I guess, CHOP is the children's home. Yeah, children's hospital. So what would a children's hospital, what does it do so special that can't be done by other hospitals? I don't know anything about the school there.
I specialties in certain childcare situations, maybe doctors, surgeons, different healthcare providers that they have pool departments to help as opposed to not.
Yeah, I mean, they have fun, I assume the answer comes down to the fact that they have funding,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, okay, research, yeah, research is a big thing, and then like also technology too. Thinking, maybe even going like zooming out and looking like globally, looking at like a country like Cuba, which is currently under, it's been under an embargo for like 65 years at this point. And they still, it's kind of astounding how well the healthcare system works there. Because of this blockade, they don't have access to, basic things like medicine, like things like syringes or like even things like Tylenol or like inhalers like that. They rely on like stuff that is like made within the country, which as like a Caribbean island country, a lot of these things aren't like, really naturally, so they can't produce that much. And then also like things like donations and but the health outcomes in Cuba are actually by and large better than health outcomes in the US. And it comes down to access. Even though their healthcare technology, or even though like their healthcare system is, not really the best like technologically, everyone has access to it. They produce so many doctors each year, so many nurses. They actually have the capacity to care for everyone in the country. So even though they don't really have everything that they truly need, they're doing the best with what they can. So imagine if we applied something like that to a country that has like all of this wealth, right? All of these resources, all of this technology would be insane.
Albert and then Taylor on stack. I will say we're coming up on 4:30. We're more than welcome to hang out and continue this conversation. I'm sure some of us will be sticking around, but want to be respectful of people's time as well. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Albert?
Yeah, so as Shane was saying, there's also an integrative component to Cuba's health, right? In Cuba, everything by necessity is basically locally grown, right? And so you're eating the freshest food, and then, it's not a meat-based diet, right? You grow a lot more calories per acre with a plant-based diet. So they're eating a largely plant-based diet in Cuba. And you can contrast that with the diet in the United States, where the food we eat basically makes us sick. And it can almost be said to do that by design, because not only is it more profitable to produce lower quality food, it also brings profit for the healthcare industry, right? So there's not going to be, if you solve Americans' health through food, pharmaceutical companies, which have tremendous control over the US economy, they're going to complain. They're not going to like that. They're not going to want any kind of policy that actually prevents people from getting sick, because they want you to get sick.
Taylor?
I think going to the point on Cuba too, like, because they aren't so heavily like influenced by the need for profit, they've like not created like they haven't even like poisoned their land in the same way that we have in Philadelphia. Like Philadelphia is manufacturing. It would just, if we did whatever we couldn't dump in the rivers, we would dump on the ground, right? And so now, globally homegrown food, we can't even grow food in all of their lots next to us because there's lead in the ground. But the water is lead in the ground, there's every other chemical, known to cause cancer in the ground. And so again, we see these like all of these ways that we could be empowering ourselves, we could be protecting ourselves, we could be creating a better life for ourselves. It's like either stripped away by things government and capitalists done in the past or are doing right now. And anything that we do to try and enact power with, they're actively sabotaging.
Absolutely.
I'll actually comment on something. Mugo, he, him. I guess my fun fact is I used to live in Berlin, because this is what I was gonna mention is that like, well, one of the things I've noticed, that's different. Berlin is its own experience, but like, I feel like the lack of green space or like parks in Philly really changes like, it's like the way you interact with people. Just like I mean, I remember so much of like summers in Berlin just kind of being like, you could just walk to the park and not spend any money and hang out with all of your friends and people could like buy a beer or not, like, you know, like, it was like, you could spend zero money or as much money as you wanted to, like, and just kind of hang on the park and no one's gonna bother you about it. Whereas like, I mean, just in terms of like, I live in like a 20-minute walk from here, it's like no shade walking here, it's not a hell.
Yeah.
It's like no trees. And then on top of that, just like the ability to just like be outside and not spend money and like hang with people is like difficult. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know the history of why, maybe they were pretty expensive, maybe they weren't, I don't know. But it does seem strange, especially in terms of just like, I mean, just like community, like let's say ability to like run into people at this place. You're not spending any money and like potentially, you know.
Definitely. So, yeah, there was like a period in time where there were like lots of like public projects, like especially during like the New Deal era in the US. Like, so after the Great Depression, there was this concentrated push where the government was funding a lot of programs to keep people employed, to build infrastructure. And you did have things like public pools were like a really big thing that like people took a lot of pride in. Completely free, people would go in and, you know, it was well maintained and everything. Parks as well. But the caveat is that they were segregated. And there was, you know, white supremacy is deeply embedded in a lot of like what the country does. And when you know the civil rights movement happens, the Civil Rights Act passed, you know, Jim Crow is declared legal, things have to integrate. This is when the sort of right wing of the capitalist class sort of uses this as an opportunity to defund a lot of these public areas like pools, parks, and things of that nature. You know, using like Black people as a scapegoat, being like, oh, you know, we either want it to be all white or we don't want it at all. So you know, the money for funding sort of dries up, and yeah, so that's like one of the reasons why there aren't as many parks.
Yeah, another thing too is a lot of the parks that used to exist, like Morris Square right up front, they only exist because people came together and fought for them. It used to be called like Needle Park because there was trash and legal and drug use, there's a lot of crime, and like we're really bad. And then in the 70s or 80s, the neighbors were like, fuck this, this is our park, let's take it over. So they formed an organization, a grassroots organization, and they just took it over and they cleaned the park and they kept cleaning the park and they kept cleaning the park, and now it's something that's like still beautiful and usable because the people came together and fight for that. But like you just see the total overrun of capital where it's like, you know, in Center City you have 4 parks that were laid out in like Williams original plan, like Britton House, Washington Square, and there's some other ones. Yeah. And so like it's very intentionally laid out in the beginning, like Philadelphia was this utopian idea, idealist idea. And then as capital just kept growing and growing and the city kept expanding, they don't care about this stuff anymore. They want to make money, they want to build houses and sell them for stuff like that. So it's like that's really I think why there's such a lack of green space in parks, and that like anything we do see that's still left is like it's only because people fought for it.
All right, I'm gonna end the Zoom meeting right now. And I encourage everybody to keep on talking, keep these conversations going. Either amongst yourselves here at the LC, with your friends, with your family, bringing more people back to the LC because we love that. Yeah, thank you guys.
Before y'all head out, just wanted to say thank you for being at the Philadelphia Liberation Center. I gave the spiel at the beginning, but I'll say a little bit more. So we're staffed by members of the Party for Socialist and Liberation, which is a nationwide independent socialist political party. We got branches all over. We got one here in Philly. This is our physical space. Yeah, downstairs we have a bookstore if you want to buy any books. We also have some